Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? So I kind of wanted to go ahead and kind of cover this, because Alpha Smurf, who's been on YouTube for, he's been around. Um, I caught on to some of what he was talking about with Rally Trap a little while back. Of course, some of his videos are really well covered, and I'll have them in the description below if you want to look at them. But I kind of thought I'd just sit down and kind of condense at least kind of where I'm coming from. Now, of course, these are the numbers that he had tested to see whether or not they would come up true. And again, if you're curious exactly what that ratio is, it's basically like, here you have this unit type and you're comparing it to a grunt. So it gives you kind of the average strength of what one of those units is worth according to one grunt. And so, of course, one of the things that he was discussing in one of his videos was basically this idea that, if you took like an example of a rally trap build that we've known about, it's it's otherwise known as an M44 rally trap. Okay. The idea behind this particular trap seems really simple, at least in practice, right? And again, if you look at it, it's 2 mil at 2 mil, and then I don't even think when that rally trap was working, it didn't even have tier 3 in there to begin with. But in theory, okay, if you look at it, it's doing about 24 frontline strength and 24 anti-frontline strength. Now, interestingly enough, okay, when this rally did happen to go off, and again, this example comes from one of Tashi's videos, is that essentially the guy was left with 700k or so wounds, and this was probably, I think, the second attack when it went off. All right, and the thing is the first one he only had like, I think, 140k wounds. So the second attack had two 11k heroes, and interestingly enough, it came out to be somewhere akin to like 755k wounds. Now, the thing is that also meant he lost 105,000 or so tier 2s, which for the most part, I'm sure most of you out there are probably thinking, well, that's not really that much. It's not really that big of a deal. But in my opinion, I feel like in order to really successfully make this work the way you want it to, okay, I can tell you just from a ballpark, based on the gear that I've seen from from Tashi's video, and based on what talents and such that he had at the time, I'm gonna have to assume the guy was pushing 650 or so percent attack, roughly, on one or two particular stat types. Like, he had to be pushing that kind of attack stat with 4 to 3, maybe even 4 to 500% into the HP bar. Now, I'm not saying that for sure, okay, but I'm ballparking it because I have to assume that the guy that was rallying him with two 11k heroes and mostly, decent gold champ gear, okay, he's probably pushing about 700 to 800% in that ballpark when it comes to one unit stat. So the only thing that I, could kind of get a gist of, all right, is that the average rally, regardless of what unit type you put in tier 4, okay, assuming it was just purely one unit type, all right, is that you ultimately need to take the total number of troops. So in this case, take 2 million, for example, and assume that, in a rally, you can put exactly 375k after that. Yes, you can use the Mecha Trojan, and we'll look at that version as well, which just adds another 50k. So this goes from 375 to 425. Okay, we'll look at both examples. But in both situations, all right, the total might strength of that, okay, you're only going to need to take 2,375,000 and multiply that by 9.189. And that's coming off of his testing, okay, which puts that at 21 blah, 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 which obviously you can't really see, but let me see if I can actually make it so that you can see it. Okay, 21 or so million strength, right? And that's what the rally hit with. And this is, 24 to 21. And if he had about 700k or so after the second hit, my assumption is, and this is what I'm thinking, is if your average strength is at 24, and this rally that hit was in 21 or 22, right, then there was only a 2 million or so gap. And assuming, right, that the player himself is probably doing 600, the enemy is using about 200% or more attack than he is. And so to make up that gap, that 200% gap is about enough to go over or meet at the 24 mil strength mark that I've assumed up to this point. The gear is kind of a, it's warping. So I started looking at the numbers that he happened to have provided in this guide. And again, I'll link the video below if you actually want to look into this further, because it's all credit to him. But looking at the numbers here, and again, I'm not even talking building the amount of troops to begin with, but theoretically, I was looking at this like, well, you could just build 300,000 extra into both types, and now you're at 28 mil, and even then, you're now about 4 to 5, maybe even a 6 mil gap between the target army that you're up against. And the thing is the total number of troops here, mind you, okay, is at 2,300,000 times 3, which is 6.9 million. And then you have an additional 2,300,000 or so times 3 again. So you just multiply that twice, you get 13.8. And that's, I believe, about the magic ballpark for your total troops anyway. So from what I can tell, I think this is kind of the theorized rally trap that is like a one and done kind of thing, because you can see here that when it's all said and done, it's at 28 mil. Now again, if you wanted to get reinforcements, right, on the worst case scenario, I mean, even still with reinforcements, you can see the wound cost there isn't going to be very high. But I mean, even then, without even reinforcements, assuming you don't even have these, it really shouldn't do terrible at all on its own. It really shouldn't. Okay. I mean, obviously, there are different types of builds that have been used in the past. And a lot of people have been sitting down, and I think one of the things that we could even do now is we could sit down, look at some rally trap videos that have been out there. We could actually analyze them and see, exactly what kind of benefit could we get out of this. But the thing about it is, right, with like a rally where Mr. BP and Sun Z came together, and that was with Purple Champ, you can see that the problem that was occurring here is you got a good chunk of tier 1s, but the thing is that when it comes to anti-frontline, all right, the main problem, and this is the main thing, if you're having difficulty understanding this, just understand that frontline and anti-frontline is in relation to like what unit type you started in. So if you're an infantry phalanx, that's your frontline. Your anti-frontline is basically what counters the cavalry that's hitting your infantry, or vice versa, which would be your range. So your anti-frontline in that case would be your range, your frontline is your infantry. But that's going to change depending on what phalanx you're using. Okay, so if you're using cavalry and your anti-frontline to that would be infantry, vice versa, okay? But now when it comes to the actual damage, like where are we getting these kind of numbers? This is only after the fact, okay? And that's the thing about this in particular, is it's really more or less after the fact. It's just a theoretical idea of, well, if I took 2.375 mil and I kill after this, it gives you kind of an idea of what you would expect from a wound, because this is kind of giving you a kind of a test case to kind of see what exactly it's going to do, potentially. It doesn't really say any, it doesn't really give you a very accurate way to predict it per se, but the thing about it is though, and this is the thing that I've, at least that I get a gist out of it, is that clearly the more troops you put in here, okay, as a front line, okay, mind you, in the case of like tier 3s, tier 4s and stuff of that nature, the bigger your front line is, the more it's going to absorb, and unfortunately the bigger portion that you're having to absorb is often going to lead into a higher wound or higher killed ratio, especially if you're in the counter, like you're in counter phalanx. So meaning that, if I'm in infantry and I let someone attack me in cavalry, it's going to hurt like hell. There's no way, there's no dicing around it. If you went into the counter phalanx and went to range, you'd be fine. If you even go even across cav and cav, you're still not as bad off than had you taken it, an inf to like an inf to cav kind of situation. It's like, for the most part, as long as you keep the cav, or range or inf phalanx of whatever you're in, and counter to whatever they're using, you're 90% of the time going to be fine. Right? Now, obviously, the thing about it is, and this is true, this holds true even for this particular situation, right? Is that when this guy actually did eat the rallies that he did, okay, he had not 1, not 2, not 3, but like a whole row of 5 army attack heroes that put him at 100% army attack. Now, I'm just gonna ballpark it and say just right off of what he had, because I'm pretty sure at the time I think he had 3 blight rings. Okay, he had a skull crusher, and then he had some a firewall plate. I think he may have had that to gold, but I doubt it. But it's possible. I'm not even sure anymore because it's so outdated. But the thing about it is something like that. Okay, just going off those numbers alone, I can tell you that his, because of the talents that Tashi suggested that he had at the time, okay, he easily could have been doing 400% or so into infantry, cavalry, or range. Easily. And with 100% army attack coming in from his heroes, I know for a fact that that puts him at 500 or so. Okay, and assuming that he popped a 20% army boost, had a prison boost, and maybe even had an altar boost, there's at least 40% there that I know he could have potentially had. Okay? And so with 40% or so into those stats, that easily puts him even closer to 600. But what I'm saying is that if these are the kind of stats we've had, and again, this was back when, you only had like 2 11K heroes, you didn't have Mecha Trojan, and a lot of this stuff wasn't exactly available. Okay? My opinion on this, or at least the modern approach to this nowadays, I don't think it's really changed that much. Okay, but again, I'm more than happy to listen to what anybody has to say in the comment section below, because again, this is an interesting territory to get into, because almost every time you think or theorize in this, obviously a lot of you guys out there are going to tell me right away, this is almost downright insane to build. And the reason being is pretty straightforward. I mean, hell, I can do, just using his particular guide, and again, I have one for myself too, as you guys probably all know. All right, but just looking at it alone, looking at what he's got inside this template for you guys, all right, at 2.5 million, it is going to take 417 times of just sitting here, clicking the gem button over and over again, and it takes exactly 1 million gems for me to do this, because I can currently get 2482 for every 6K that I have. So it's basically 2,500 gems for every 6,000 troops that I build. Okay, and it's going to cost me 1 million gems to do that once. And the interesting part is that not only is it going to cost me 1 million gems, but it's also going to cost me a considerable amount of resources. Okay, like as you can see in here, if I get rid of these two and just assume that I didn't have to build these, okay, it's exactly 2 billion or so into these resources, and then about 1 billion gold. It's not an easy task to accomplish. All right. But the thing is, and this is also the thing I like about it, is it also tells you how many days that you would need for it. So in this case, it's 770 or so days. That's not terrible, okay? Like in terms of getting days like that, it's achievable. I've gotten that amount of speeds before. It takes time, but it's not impossible. Okay, but you have to stack that 3 times. Because now you're at 2,300. I mean, the thing about it is just getting 2.5 mil across is pretty easy. Now, I did do the math to figure out what the 2.5 mil in tier 2s is, okay? Or 2.3 or whatever version of it it's going to be. It's about 1 billion gems a pop anyway. All right, when you've done this up here. And then it's going to cost you about 1 million gems total just to get the 2.5 mil across for all 3. Okay, and the resource cost is obviously not going to be any cheaper either, okay? Like, a lot of the time it's pretty expensive. Not as much as the tier 4 is, obviously, but you kind of get the point, right? It's just the reason why I kind of thought I'd go ahead and show you guys this Alpha Smurfs template and kind of bring this stuff up again and kind of bring it back into relevancy is that I think a lot of this kind of helps with you guys a lot more if you guys really wanted to actually understand rallies. And kind of get it down to where, now you can kind of trap rallies without having near as much difficulty. Because the thing that I love about this particular template, and again, I really think this video deserves more recognition overall. Like, if anything, you guys really ought to check out Alpha Smurf's video on this. But, I mean, in all seriousness, okay, like, the thing that is really interesting to me about this particular guide that he happens to have, and essentially, the interesting tool that I like about this, okay, is now let's suppose, all right, if I take the strength, and again, I'm gonna try and use this to kind of compare, right? And I'm gonna be doing a lot more of this here soon. Is what I wonder is, and this is the theory that I've got in my mind here, is I wonder if you can compare frontline strength and anti-frontline strength, and kind of get an idea of what difference it would make depending on different rally types, right? So like if I sent, you know, all 5 gold legendary attack heroes and all of these different bonuses and stack, bonuses that 11k heroes get and everything, at what point can I finally get it below a 600k wound cost? Because again, that is an insanely difficult thing to do, and frankly I don't think most people can achieve it. But when you want to see what high end it looks like, that's always nice. The cool thing too is that then you can also kind of start to predict that what your wound cost is going to be, and that I think is pretty valuable, because if you can start to predict that, say, if I had 1,000,000 reinforcements, and again, 90% of the time, if you want to know the truth, okay, reinforcements are always tier 3. They're never tier 4. A lot of the time, they're not tier 2s or tier 1s. It's always tier 3. Okay, but the thing about it is, and the reason why, in case you're wondering why they do this, is because essentially this is the front line 90% of the time. Where like this is just kind of the this is a lot of the time it's there, it's shock absorber, but this is really what does a number on the absorption rate for a lot of traps that are out there. But it's just, I find it very fascinating, and hopefully you guys find some value in this stuff and maybe you'll take a look at it. But needless to say, I don't know, just from what what I've seen and kind of what I've seen with the information provided here, that in my opinion, I feel like the current build that I think I'm going to wind up going with is going to be this particular build over here. Now, of course, when it comes to actually creating it, obviously that's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take some effort. And in case you're wondering, yes, I do have a way, and I know a way that I think I can actually build that many tier 4 and that many tier 2 and get the resources necessary. And I'll tell you about it more in future videos. And hopefully we will have some more rallies and stuff like that coming out. Because here in 281, it's I think it's possible. I really do. But needless to say, I hope you guys kind of enjoyed it. Please check out Alpha Smurf's video out. Because again, I really think it really is useful. Like, there is some validity to it even today. And to be honest with you, I really do think that you put all of that in consideration. Hopefully you guys will find some value in it. And well, needless to say, I'll catch you guys later. Check out these videos, and I'll see you guys next time.